Write in the comments where you are watching from and at what time so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like. There are truths that bury those who find them. Tonight, we unseal a forgotten file, a collection of whispers and shadows, cataloging those who stumbled upon forbidden knowledge and were erased from the world. This is the Obsidian Archive's investigation into Case File Omega, the Silenced. Write in the comments where you are watching from and at what time so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. Welcome to the Obsidian Archive. In the vast, interconnected web of human knowledge, there are threads that, if pulled, unravel not just a secret, but the very fabric of a person's existence. These are the stories of the Cassandras, individuals cursed with a truth so dangerous, so monumental, that their society could not bear to hear it. And so society, or the powerful forces that shape it, chose another solution: silence. Not the silence of disbelief, but the absolute, deafening silence of erasure. The Cassandra Signal is the name we give to that final, desperate transmission from a person who has stumbled upon a forbidden truth. It's the frantic phone call, the encrypted email, the package of documents mailed to a journalist that never arrives. It is the last cry of a voice about to be extinguished. Consider the case of Gary Webb, a journalist who, through his Dark Alliance series, alleged connections between the CIA, Nicaraguan Contra rebels, and the crack cocaine epidemic that ravaged American cities. He pulled a thread, and a tapestry of shadow government operations began to unravel. He was not ignored. He was systematically discredited. His career was destroyed, his reputation shattered. And while his death was officially ruled a suicide, the 2 gunshot wounds to his head have fueled a persistent, chilling question mark. Was his death the final brutal act of silencing a modern-day Cassandra? Or think of Karen Silkwood, a chemical technician at the Kerr-McGee plutonium plant. She discovered what she believed to be serious safety violations, including exposure of workers to contamination. She gathered evidence, a thick binder of documents, ready to expose the company's negligence to a New York Times journalist. On the night of November 13, 1974, she was driving to meet that journalist. She never arrived. Her car was found in a ditch, and Karen was dead. The official report cited a car accident. She had fallen asleep at the wheel. But the binder of evidence was gone. An autopsy found sedatives in her system, enough to make her drowsy, but her friends and family insisted she would never have taken them before such a crucial meeting. Skid marks at the scene suggested another vehicle may have forced her off the road. She had sent her signal, a warning about a danger that threatened public health. And for her efforts, she was removed from the equation. Her story serves as a chilling blueprint. Discover, document, attempt to expose, and then disappear. The signal is sent, but the messenger is intercepted before the message can be truly understood. These are not mere accidents or unfortunate coincidences. They are patterns. They are the echoes of voices that knew too much, who saw the rot beneath the floorboards of power, and paid the ultimate price for trying to turn on the light. In the cold, sterile world of numbers, data, and code, there is supposed to be an objective truth. 1 + 1 = 2. A line of code either executes or it doesn't. But what happens when the numbers reveal a truth that is inconvenient, unprofitable, or criminal? What happens when a meticulous mind trained to find and correct errors, uncovers a discrepancy that was placed there by design. This is the story of the analyst, the accountant, the programmer, the quiet professionals who vanished not because of what they said, but because of what they found. Their disappearance becomes the final, grim calculation in a deadly equation. Take, for instance, the enigmatic case of Philip Marshall, a former airline pilot and author who wrote extensively about his theories on the 9/11 attacks, focusing on the logistical and financial trails. He was a man obsessed with data, with flight paths, with the money that flowed between clandestine organizations. He claimed to have uncovered explosive information linking Saudi intelligence to the hijackers. He was preparing to release his fourth book, filled with what he called smoking gun evidence. Then, in February 2013, he and his 2 children were found dead in their home. The authorities quickly declared it a murder-suicide, but friends and colleagues were adamant. Philip was not suicidal. He was on the verge of a breakthrough. The crime scene was bizarre, with an almost surgical cleanliness that some investigators found suspicious. Was this a tragic domestic incident? Or was it the brutal silencing of a man whose calculations had led him too close to a terrifying truth? His death neatly erased both the man and his research from the public ledger. Consider also the financial world, a labyrinth of algorithms and high-stakes transactions. In the years following the 2008 financial crisis, a number of mid- to high-level bankers met untimely and often bizarre deaths, many of which were ruled suicides. These were not CEOs, but the quantitative analysts, the risk managers, the data specialists, the very people whose job it was to scrutinize the complex financial instruments that nearly collapsed the global economy. They were the ones who would have seen the calculated discrepancies, the deliberate manipulations, the rot in the system's code. Did they stumble upon ongoing fraud? Were they preparing to blow the whistle on a system that had learned nothing from its near-death experience? The official narrative for each death was personal despair or tragic accident. But the sheer number, the clustering of these events, paints a disturbing picture. It suggests a potential purge, a calculated removal of individuals who could connect the dots and expose a multi-trillion-dollar house of cards. Their disappearance is the ultimate non-disclosure agreement, a permanent redaction of a human variable that threatened the entire system. Beyond the conspiracies, the redacted files, and the chilling patterns, there is a simple, devastating reality. A void. An empty chair at the dinner table. A silent phone that will never ring again. A space once filled by a person who is now only a memory and a collection of unanswered questions. This is the human cost of knowing too much. When a person is erased, the lives of those who loved them are forever fractured, left to navigate a world of uncertainty, suspicion, and grief that has no closure. The empty chair is a monument to a life stolen not by fate, but by a deliberate, hidden hand. Think of the family of Danny Casolaro, an investigative journalist in the early 1990s. Danny was chasing a story he called The Octopus, a sprawling conspiracy he believed connected everything from government spy software to the Iran-Contra affair and the BCCI banking scandal. He was a man consumed by his work, telling his family he was meeting a crucial source who would finally provide the proof he needed to tie it all together. He told his brother, "If anything happens to me, don't believe it's an accident." Days later, he was found dead in a hotel bathtub in Martinsburg, West Virginia. His wrists were slashed multiple times. The official cause of death was suicide. But all of his research, his extensive notes, his briefcase full of documents, all of it was gone. His family was left not just with the horror of his death, but with the torment of his final warning. For them, the empty chair is not just a symbol of loss, but a constant reminder of a stolen truth. They are forced to live in the shadow of a conspiracy that consumed their loved one and then denied them even the dignity of an honest explanation. Or consider the quiet, persistent agony of the family of Thelma Krall, a 57-year-old grandmother from Winnipeg, Canada. In 2015, she went for a morning walk and never returned. An avid hiker, she was training for a long-distance trek. Her glasses were found on the ground in a local park. Her phone was gone. Years of searching turned up nothing but dead ends and whispers. Police eventually reclassified her case from a missing person to a homicide, believing she was the victim of a violent abduction. But investigators also noted Thelma was a woman who noticed things, a vigilant member of her community. Had she inadvertently witnessed something she wasn't supposed to see during her routine walk? A drug deal, a clandestine meeting, a crime in progress. Did she stumble into a secret world that intersected with her own for just a few fatal seconds? Her family is left with this unbearable, open-ended question. The empty chair in their home represents a terrifying randomness, a testament to how quickly a normal life can be extinguished simply by being in the wrong place at the wrong time and seeing the wrong thing. The silence they endure is a weapon, designed to make others think twice before looking too closely or speaking up. In the aftermath of every disappearance, every convenient suicide, every unsolved mystery, there is the official narrative. It is a story crafted by authorities, corporations, and governments, designed to be clean, simple, and above all, final. It is the wall built to stop further questions. But for those who look closely, this wall is full of cracks, inconsistencies, and heavily redacted sections that betray a deeper, hidden truth. The official narrative is not the end of the story. It is often the beginning of the cover-up. The very tools of bureaucracy become weapons of obfuscation. The Freedom of Information Act, designed to promote transparency, becomes a labyrinth of delays, exemptions, and denials. When documents are finally released, they are often a sea of black ink. Entire pages, paragraphs, and key names are redacted under the guise of national security or ongoing investigation. What truth is being protected? More often than not, it is the security of an institution, not the nation. The redacted file is a confession in itself. It admits that there is something to hide, something so significant that the public cannot be trusted with the knowledge. It is the ghost of the information the disappeared person died to protect. Consider the death of Frank Olson, a CIA bacteriologist who fell from a 13th floor hotel window in 1953. For 22 years, his family was told it was a tragic suicide, that he had a nervous breakdown. That was the official narrative. It was simple and closed the case. But in 1975, the Rockefeller Commission revealed the truth. The CIA had secretly dosed Olson with LSD as part of the MK-Ultra mind control program. The official narrative was a lie, a calculated deception to cover up a criminal government experiment. The story was revised. His death was now an accidental, drug-induced tragedy. But when his body was exhumed in 1994, forensic pathologists found evidence of blunt force trauma to the head sustained before the fall. The evidence pointed not to a suicide or an accident, but to a murder. The official narrative had shifted twice, each time revealing only as much as it was forced to, and each time it still fell short of the likely truth. He knew the secrets of the CIA's darkest programs, and he was having a crisis of conscience. He was a security risk. He had to be silenced, and his death had to be sanitized for public consumption. This is the final, cynical stage in the life cycle of a forbidden truth. First, the witness is eliminated. Second, their story is discredited or ignored. And third, an official narrative is constructed and reinforced by the full weight of institutional authority. Any attempt to question it is met with ridicule, labeled as conspiracy theory. The redacted file, the stonewalling press conference, the case closed stamp, they are all mechanisms designed to enforce a collective amnesia. They are the final insult to those who vanished, an attempt to erase not just their lives, but the very reason they were taken. But here, in the Obsidian Archive, we refuse to forget. We read between the blacked-out lines because we know that the most important truths are often found in the spaces where the words used to be. History does not repeat itself, but it often rhymes. In the shadowy world of inconvenient truths, this rhyme can be a death sentence. We call it the second echo, the phenomenon where an individual, often years or even decades later, stumbles upon the same forbidden knowledge that led to a predecessor's disappearance. It begins innocently. A curious academic, a tenacious journalist, or even a family member seeking closure. They start pulling at a loose thread from a cold case, a story that the world has long forgotten. They find an old box of files in an attic, a cryptic note tucked inside a book, or a single anomalous data point in a forgotten server. At first, it's a puzzle, an intellectual exercise. But as they dig deeper, the puzzle pieces begin to form a picture they were never meant to see. The new investigator starts to walk the same path as the one who vanished. They visit the same locations, interview the same aging witnesses who speak in hushed, fearful tones. They start receiving the same veiled warnings, anonymous emails, silent phone calls, the unnerving sensation of being followed. This is the echo chamber of the damned. The path has already been laid, the traps already set. The forces that silenced the first voice did not simply dismantle their operation. They fortified it. They learned from the first instance, sealing the cracks through which the truth had previously tried to escape. The new investigator believes they are uncovering a secret, but what they are actually doing is tripping a silent alarm, a system left dormant, waiting for the next person to come looking. Consider the case of Gary Webb, the journalist who linked the CIA to the crack cocaine epidemic and whose career was systematically destroyed before his suspicious death. Years later, other researchers who attempted to corroborate and expand on his Dark Alliance series reported intense, coordinated online harassment, financial audits, and inexplicable technical failures. They were hearing the echo of Webb's fate, a warning resonating through time. The second echo is terrifying because it implies a permanent patient system of control. It suggests that certain truths are not just buried, but are guarded by a self-resetting mechanism. The disappearance of the first person serves not only as a removal, but as a baited trap for the next. The original case files become a lure, the unanswered questions a siren song. And as the second investigator feels the walls closing in, they face a horrifying realization. They are not solving a mystery. They are becoming the next chapter of it. The world is filled with noise, a constant barrage of information and misinformation we call static. Within this chaos, the disappearance of a single individual is easily lost, dismissed as a personal tragedy, a runaway case, or an unfortunate accident. But when you tune out the static and begin to look for signals, patterns emerge. Frightening, undeniable patterns that connect the vanished. On the surface, what does a software engineer from Silicon Valley have in common with an environmental scientist in the Amazon or a financial regulator from Brussels? Nothing, it would seem. Their lives, their work, their worlds are entirely separate. They are disparate points on a global map. Yet, when you examine the days and weeks leading up to their disappearances, the static clears. The software engineer was working on an algorithm that could predict corporate espionage, but he found it could also trace illicit money flows to clandestine government programs. The environmental scientist wasn't just studying deforestation. She had discovered that specific protected areas were being used for illegal chemical waste disposal by a multinational corporation with military contracts. The financial regulator wasn't just auditing banks. He had uncovered a network of shell companies used to bypass international sanctions, a network that led back to powerful political figures. Each one had crossed a different invisible line, yet it was the same line. They had each, in their own field, stumbled upon a component of a much larger machine, a machine that operates in the shadows, connecting corporate power, black ops funding, and political control. This is the architecture of modern power. It is decentralized, compartmentalized, and ruthlessly efficient. The system is designed so that no single person has the full picture. But these individuals, through their diligence and expertise, had each found a load-bearing wall. Their removal was not a random act of violence, it was structural maintenance. Investigators who look for these patterns are often ridiculed as conspiracy theorists. They are told they are seeing faces in the clouds, connecting unrelated tragedies to fit a preconceived narrative. But the evidence, when compiled, tells a different story. It points to shared methodologies, the sudden and complete wiping of digital footprints, the appearance of forged goodbye notes, the discovery of their abandoned vehicles in places they would never visit. These are not coincidences. They are signatures. They are the hallmarks of a hidden, coordinated entity that prunes away those who see too much of the underlying code of our world. The static is its camouflage, and the patterns are its fingerprints. Before a person disappears, they are first unpersoned. Their privacy is methodically dismantled, their life converted into a stream of observable data points. They become a target. And in the modern world, the tools of observation are everywhere. We call the operators of these tools the watchers on the periphery. They are not necessarily men in black trench coats sitting in unmarked vans anymore. The surveillance is far more insidious, more integrated into the fabric of our lives. It begins subtly. The target might notice their battery life draining inexplicably fast. Their online ads become unnervingly specific, referencing words spoken in the privacy of their own home. A friend request from a stranger who has an unsettling number of mutual acquaintances. These are the first digital breadcrumbs, the initial reconnaissance. The watchers are mapping their life, their routines, their relationships. They are looking for vulnerabilities, for points of leverage. This is the passive phase. The active phase is more direct. A wrong number call where the person on the other end stays silent, listening. A car, always the same model and color, that appears in their rearview mirror on different routes. A utility worker needing emergency access to their apartment when nothing is wrong. Each incident is designed to be deniable, to sound like paranoia if spoken aloud. It's a form of psychological warfare intended to isolate the target, to make them doubt their own sanity. Who are the Watchers? They are a mosaic. They are state intelligence analysts with access to global surveillance networks, like Echelon. They are corporate security contractors, ex-military, hired to protect proprietary interests with extreme prejudice. They are data brokers who sell packaged profiles of individuals' lives for a price. They are even automated systems, AI programmed to flag keywords, behaviors, and connections that signify a potential threat to an established order. The goal is total information awareness. Before they make their move, the Watchers will know their target better than the target knows themselves. They will have their medical records, their financial history, their psychological profile, their secret shames, and their deepest fears. This exhaustive surveillance serves two purposes. First, it confirms the threat. Did this person really discover what we think they discovered? And how many people have they told? Second, it provides the blueprint for their disappearance, ensuring it is clean, efficient, and leaves behind a narrative of their own choosing. Suicide, accidental death, a voluntary decision to start a new life. The true horror of the Watchers is not just that they can erase you. It's that before they do, they will have lived inside your life, turning your own world against you until you have nowhere left to hide. What happens after the vanishing? After the door closes for the last time, after the final phone call cuts to silence, what remains of a person who knew too much? The answer is a carefully constructed void, an absence sculpted by unseen hands. This is the final act, the creation of a trail of burned breadcrumbs. Unlike the fairy tale, these breadcrumbs are not meant to lead anyone home. They are designed to lead everywhere and nowhere, to create a fog of confusion and misdirection that eventually exhausts all pursuit. The process is systematic. First comes the digital ghosting. Social media profiles are not just deleted, they are manipulated. A final out-of-character post might appear, taking some time for myself, or a vague, cheerful message about starting over. Emails are accessed, and threads with sensitive information are surgically removed. Cloud backups are wiped. The person's entire online existence is curated to suggest a voluntary departure, a deliberate, if sudden, break from their life. Then comes the physical erasure. Colleagues at work are quietly told the person resigned for a better opportunity, and a non-disclosure agreement is signed. Friends and distant family receive a single, untraceable text message wishing them well. In their apartment, investigators might find a scene that is too perfect. The bed is made, but a single suitcase is missing. A travel guide to a foreign country is left open on the coffee table. These are not clues. They are props. They are the burned breadcrumbs. For those who refuse to accept the official narrative, the persistent family members, the dedicated private investigators, a more aggressive form of misdirection is deployed. False leads are planted. A sighting is reported in a city 1,000 miles away. A withdrawal is made from their bank account in another country, often just enough to trigger an alert and send investigators on a wild goose chase. These are expensive, high-level operations. The goal is to make the search for truth so costly, so frustrating, and so fruitless that eventually even the most determined loved ones are forced to give up. The final, most brutal breadcrumb is the character assassination. Whispers begin to circulate. The person had a secret gambling debt. They were involved in an affair. They were mentally unstable. These rumors, planted in the soil of grief and confusion, grow into a new, accepted truth. It's easier to believe that a person was flawed and ran away than to confront the terrifying alternative: that they were silenced for knowing something they shouldn't. The trail of burned breadcrumbs is the ultimate act of control. It doesn't just remove a person, it retroactively rewrites their life, ensuring that the truth they died to protect remains buried forever beneath layers of lies and carefully crafted fiction. Write in the comments where you are watching from and at what time, so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. Narrator. In the ecosystem of secrets, the journalist is the apex predator. They hunt for the truth in the dark, armed with little more than a pen, a source, and a dangerous amount of curiosity. But sometimes, the prey hunts back. This is the story of Danny Sullivan, a man who wagered his life on a headline. The year was 1978. The air in every newsroom was thick with the ghosts of Watergate and the intoxicating belief that no one was above the story. Danny was a bulldog of a reporter for the now-defunct San Francisco Chronicle, known for his rumpled trench coat and a nose for corruption that twitched at the slightest whiff of a lie. He wasn't chasing politicians. He was chasing the shadows behind them. His focus was a labyrinthine corporate entity known as Omnicorp, a defense contractor that seemed to have its tendrils in everything, from telecommunications to private military operations. Publicly, they were patriots, building the future. Privately, Danny's sources whispered of something far more sinister: a merger, not with another company, but with a clandestine faction within the government itself. It was a silent coup, fought not on battlefields, but in boardrooms and encrypted memos. His investigation was a descent into paranoia. His apartment became a fortress of notes, corkboards connected by a spider web of red yarn. He spoke in code on the phone, met his sources in the back pews of empty churches, and always checked his rearview mirror. He received the warnings: a dead rat on his doorstep, a single perfectly typed note left on his car windshield that read, "Some stories are never meant to be written." But Danny believed in the power of the press. He believed that if he could just get the evidence, the documents, the ledger, the proof, onto the front page, the light would disinfect the rot. This was his gambit. He told his editor, a weary man named Alistair Finch, that he was days away from breaking it all open. He had a final meeting scheduled with his key source, a high-level Omnicorp executive known only as Prometheus. The meeting was set for midnight at the fog-shrouded piers. Danny went. He was never seen again. His apartment was professionally scrubbed, not ransacked, but sanitized. Every note, every cassette tape, every piece of his investigation, gone. The police report was thin, concluding he likely fell into the bay. A tragic accident. Alistair Finch tried to pursue the story, but the leads went cold. Prometheus was a ghost. Omnicorp released a sterile statement of sympathy. The story died. Danny Sullivan became another name whispered in late-night conversations in smoky bars, a cautionary tale for reporters who dig too deep. His gambit failed. He didn't publish the truth. He became part of the silence that surrounds it. Narrator. The most dangerous secrets are not stolen. They are witnessed. They are discovered by men and women on the inside. The scientists, the engineers, the analysts who stumble upon a truth so dark it was never meant for human eyes. They become the keepers of a terrible knowledge, facing a choice: silence and safety, or truth and oblivion. Dr. Eris Thorne was a bioethicist at the secluded Starlight Mountain Research Facility, a privately funded think tank nestled deep in the Nevada desert. His official work involved genetic sequencing for agricultural applications. It was a quiet, respectable, and profoundly boring job. But Starlight Mountain had layers, like an onion, and the deeper you went, the more it made you cry. Thorne, through an accidental server breach, gained access to a sub-level directory codenamed Karen. What he found was not agricultural data. It was human. Specifically, it was research into memetic engineering, the science of creating and weaponizing ideas, of designing a cognitive virus that could spread through a population and alter belief systems, incite mass panic, or enforce unwavering obedience. The project logs were clinical, terrifying, and detailed successful, small-scale trials in undisclosed locations. Thorne was a man of conscience. He couldn't live with this knowledge. He began to meticulously copy the files onto a microdrive, his hands trembling as he worked late into the night, the hum of the servers sounding like a gathering storm. He was no spy. He was a scientist, and he was terrified. He tried to become a whistleblower. His first attempts were clumsy. Encrypted emails to journalists were bounced back by impenetrable firewalls. A call from a payphone to a senator's office was met with a polite but firm dismissal. He could feel the net tightening. His security clearance was flagged for anomalous activity. Colleagues he'd known for years suddenly avoided his gaze in the cafeteria. He started hearing clicks on his home phone line. The whispers from the inside were being suffocated. His final known communication was a garbled audio file sent to an independent blogger. Most of it is static, but through the noise you can hear Thorne's panicked voice. They're not just ideas. It's a plague for the mind. Karen is... It's real. They know Oh God, they're here. The audio cuts out abruptly. The next day, Starlight Mountain Research Facility reported that Dr. Eris Thorne had resigned due to a sudden family emergency and moved abroad. His bank accounts were emptied. His house was sold. His digital footprint was methodically erased. To the world, he simply ceased to be. He was a whisper that was finally and permanently silenced. Narrator. It is an urban legend that has permeated our culture, a modern-day boogeyman for the information age. The unmarked black van. It arrives without warning, usually in the dead of night, its engine a low hum that barely disturbs the suburban silence. It is the physical manifestation of an invisible power, a tool used to correct anomalies, people who have seen, heard, or learned something they were not supposed to. This isn't just folklore. It's a protocol, a procedure for removing a problem. Our case file opens on Julian Croft, a hacktivist who operated under the handle Icarus. He was brilliant, arrogant, and believed that all information should be free. In the spring of 2003, he breached what he thought was a corporate server. It wasn't. It was a dark network, a firewalled corner of the internet used by a consortium of intelligence agencies to coordinate off-the-books operations. What Croft found was not data, but a kill list. Code names, locations, and scheduled terminations of foreign and domestic targets deemed threats to national security. But these weren't terrorists or enemy combatants. They were journalists, activists, and low-level politicians. Croft was horrified. He downloaded a single encrypted file as proof, a manifest codenamed Operation Clean Slate. He knew he was in over his head. The system pushed back immediately. His internet connection became unstable. His devices malfunctioned. He started noticing the same nondescript sedan parked down the street from his apartment for days on end. His paranoia escalated. He confided in a fellow hacker in a secure chat room, a transcript of which was later leaked. "It's not just surveillance," Croft wrote. "It's preparatory. They're boxing me in. I see them everywhere. Men in ill-fitting suits. They don't look at me, but I know they're watching." He made a plan to release the manifest to a major news outlet. He never got the chance. The final piece of the puzzle comes from a neighbor, an elderly woman who was woken by her dog, barking at 3:14 a.m. She peered through her blinds and saw it. An impossibly black, windowless van parked in front of Croft's building. She saw two figures, tall and indistinct in the darkness, emerge from the building, holding a third, unmoving figure between them. They placed him in the back of the van, the side door sliding shut with a quiet, final thud. The van pulled away without its headlights on, disappearing into the night. Julian Croft was reported missing by his family 2 days later. The police found his apartment unlocked. His computer was gone. There were no signs of a struggle. His existence was methodically scrubbed. The Black Van Protocol was successful. It is a chillingly efficient system designed to uphold the ultimate secret: that there are forces who operate beyond any law, who can and will erase anyone who threatens to expose their world. Narrator. Humanity's history is a book with missing pages. We tell ourselves we understand our origins, our place in the universe, but what if a discovery was made that was so profound, so paradigm-shattering, that it threatened the very foundations of society? What if the truth was deemed too dangerous for us to know? In 2011, the deep-sea research vessel, the Wanderer, was on a mapping expedition in the Pacific, charting a section of the Mariana Trench. The mission was funded by a shadowy private consortium under the classified designation Project Nightingale. The lead researcher was Dr. Alara Vance, a brilliant marine geologist. For weeks, the mission was routine. Then, they found something. Sonar returned an impossible image from the trench floor, a structure. It was perfectly geometric, miles wide, and showed signs of artificial construction. It was older than any known civilization by an order of magnitude. This was not a human structure. Vance and her team were ecstatic, believing they had made the greatest discovery in human history. They deployed a remote submersible, the Orpheus, to get a visual. The fragmented video logs, later leaked by a sympathetic technician, are haunting. They show colossal, non-Euclidean architecture covered in unknown hieroglyphs that seem to pulse with a faint, internal luminescence. The discovery broke their understanding of biology, history, and physics. The final log from Dr. Vance is filled with a sense of awe and terror. The scale, it's not a city, it's a machine, or a tomb. The energy readings are off the charts. It's broadcasting something, a signal. I think we woke it up. We have to tell the world. This changes everything. That was the last transmission the Wanderer ever sent. 24 hours later, its emergency beacon was activated, then abruptly went silent. An international rescue operation found no wreckage, no oil slick, no survivors. The vessel and its crew of 27 had simply vanished from the face of the Earth. The consortium behind Project Nightingale issued a statement claiming the vessel was lost in a sudden, unpredicted rogue wave. They classified all mission data, citing proprietary research. Dr. Vance and her team were declared dead, heroes lost to the unforgiving sea. But the few who have seen the leaked data know the truth. The discovery was not lost. It was buried, suppressed. A truth so monumental that a powerful, hidden authority decided humanity was not ready for it. They silenced the discovery by silencing the discoverers. Project Nightingale is a chilling reminder that we may only know what we are permitted to know, and that those who find the missing pages of history are often erased from the book themselves. Write in the comments where you are watching from and at what time, so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. The world is full of empty spaces. Deserts, oceans, and the vast silent continents of ice that crown our poles. We see them as blank canvases, hostile and uninhabited, but they are archives of deep time, holding secrets a billion years old. And sometimes they are chosen as tombs. In the winter of 2023, the Amundsen Scott South Pole Station lost contact with one of its most brilliant minds, Dr. Eris Thorne. He was stationed at a remote deep field camp, a tiny pressurized module designated Ice Camp Erebus, located on the Ross Ice Shelf. His official mission was straightforward: to drill and analyze ice cores for paleoclimatology data. A routine, if lonely, assignment for the 42-year-old molecular biologist. But Thorne's private logs, fragments of which were later leaked by a sympathetic station technician, tell a different story. He wasn't just looking at climate history. He was hunting for something else, something he called the ghost in the ice. His last transmission, a garbled audio file sent over a high-frequency channel, was not a distress call. It was a warning. The official report states that Dr. Thorne likely fell into an unseen crevasse during a whiteout blizzard, his body and his vehicle lost to the continent. A tragic accident. Case closed. But accidents don't leave behind encrypted data packets transmitted to a private server moments before they occur. Accidents don't involve the silent, unannounced arrival of an unmarked LC-130 Hercules aircraft at a nearby logistics hub, an aircraft belonging to a corporate entity with no official business in Antarctica. The men who disembarked were not scientists or rescue personnel. They were described as auditors, dressed in sterile black cold weather gear, their faces hidden by goggles and masks. They didn't search for a body. They meticulously dismantled Ice Camp Erebus, removing every piece of equipment, every data drive, every personal effect. They sterilized the site, leaving nothing but a patch of flattened snow where a man's life had been. They were erasing not just a person, but the very knowledge he had unearthed. Eris Thorne wasn't a victim of the ice. He was a casualty of a discovery so profound, so dangerous, that an entire continent became a crime scene, and the evidence was buried under 2 miles of frozen water and a mountain of international red tape. What did Eris Thorne find in the ice? What secret was worth the cost of a human life and a multi-million-dollar cover-up? The fragments of his data that escaped the digital quarantine provide a chilling glimpse. Thorne had drilled deeper than any previous expedition on the Ross Ice Shelf, reaching a layer of ice estimated to be over 1.5 million years old. There, frozen in a state of perfect preservation, he found something that should not exist. It wasn't a fossil. It wasn't a microbe as we understand them. In his notes, he described it as a biological structure with non-standard protein folding, a cellular matrix that operated on principles that defied terrestrial biology. The samples contained genetic markers, anomalous markers, that shared no lineage with any known organism on Earth. They were, for all intents and purposes, alien, but not in the way we imagine. This biology was not from another planet. It was from another version of this one. It was a life form that seemed to have been designed. The DNA, if you could call it that, was structured with a mathematical precision that suggested intelligent engineering. It didn't evolve. It was constructed. Furthermore, these markers were dormant, but not dead. When exposed to specific low-frequency electromagnetic fields in Thorne's lab, the cells would begin to resonate, forming complex geometric patterns and emitting faint, coherent light signals. It was a biological system that functioned like a piece of technology, a living archive. Thorne theorized he had stumbled upon the remnants of a primordial, pre-human intelligence that had encoded information into the very fabric of life itself. His final frantic log entry spoke of a horrifying revelation. The anomalous markers he found in the million-year-old ice, he had also found them somewhere else. In a control sample he had brought from home. His own blood. The ghost in the ice was also inside him. This wasn't just a discovery. It was a revelation about the very nature of humanity. It implied that our species' history was a lie, that a hidden element had been seeded into our genome long ago. And whoever seeded it, or whoever guards that secret, was not prepared for it to be revealed. Thorne didn't just find a scientific curiosity. He found the key to a locked room in our own house, and the landlords do not tolerate trespassers. The discovery that the anomalous marker was present in his own DNA sent Thorne down a rabbit hole from which he would never emerge. Working in frantic isolation, he began cross-referencing his findings with online genetic databases, medical archives, and historical records he could access through the station's satellite link. What he began to piece together was a conspiracy not of men, but of millennia. He found traces of the same marker, the same biological signature, in the preserved DNA of specific historical figures. A pharaoh from the 18th dynasty, a forgotten Renaissance inventor, a mathematician who died under mysterious circumstances in the early 20th century. It wasn't random. It appeared in individuals associated with sudden leaps in human understanding, art, science, philosophy. They were catalysts, outliers, people who saw the world differently. Thorne came to believe he had found evidence of a hidden bloodline, a lineage of individuals carrying this ancient, dormant code. He called it the human ledger, a living record of humanity's secret inheritance. But this ledger was not just a passive record, it was managed. As Thorne dug deeper, he found a shadow pattern accompanying the lineage, a history of disappearances, sudden illnesses, and unsolved accidents that befell not only the carriers of the marker, but also anyone who got too close to studying them. He uncovered records of a shadowy consortium, a group that appeared throughout history under different names, a Renaissance academy, an Enlightenment-era philosophical society, and in the modern day, a global corporate entity specializing in biotechnology and private security. The same corporation whose unmarked plane landed near his camp. This group, Thorne theorized, were the custodians, The librarians, they weren't just studying the ledger, they were editing it. They were pruning the bloodline, silencing the researchers, and ensuring this fundamental truth about human origins remained a secret. Why? Perhaps the knowledge was too destabilizing. Perhaps the dormant code, if activated, could grant abilities or knowledge that would shatter our social order. Or perhaps, more terrifyingly, the custodians are merely servants, working for the original engineers who seeded the code in the first place. Thorne's disappearance was not an isolated incident. It was a continuation of policy. He wasn't just a scientist who found something. He was an entry in the ledger who became self-aware, a book that started to read itself. And the librarians simply took him off the shelf. In the wake of Dr. Eris Thorne's official disappearance, a predictable and meticulously engineered silence descended. The first line of defense was geography. Antarctica is governed by the Antarctic Treaty System, a web of agreements that creates a continent without a country, a no-man's land of overlapping jurisdictions. When Thorne's family demanded an investigation, they were met with a bureaucratic shell game. The U.S. National Science Foundation, which managed the station, claimed the incident occurred outside its operational perimeter. The New Zealand government, responsible for search and rescue in that sector, cited the severity of the storm and the lack of recoverable evidence as grounds to close their case. Thorne was a British citizen, but the British Antarctic Survey stated they had no authority to compel foreign nationals or private corporations to cooperate. Every official inquiry hit a jurisdictional dead end. The auditors who dismantled his research camp were employees of a holding company registered in a country with opaque corporate laws, making it impossible to identify its true owners or objectives. The flight logs for their aircraft were classified under a private contract with a defense subcontractor, citing proprietary security protocols. Every door was politely but firmly closed. The few journalists who picked up the story were fed the official narrative of a tragic accident. The station technician who leaked Thorne's initial logs was quietly reassigned, and after signing a formidable non-disclosure agreement, vanished from the public record himself. It was a masterclass in modern-day suppression. Information wasn't destroyed in a bonfire. It was buried in paperwork, diluted in ambiguity, and walled off by legal firewalls. The system isn't broken. It is, in fact, working perfectly. It is designed to create shadows where powerful interests can operate without scrutiny. The story of Eris Thorne serves as a chilling blueprint for how to make a person and their knowledge disappear in plain sight. There is no file to uncover, no smoking gun to find, because the crime scene is an entire continent, and the weapon is the very system of international law we trust to protect us. The human ledger remains unread by the public, its custodians remain invisible, and the ice remains silent, holding its secrets. The final question is not what happened to Eris Thorne, but how many other names are in that ledger, and who will be the next to be erased. Write in the comments where you are watching from and at what time, so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. Narrator. Welcome back to the Obsidian Archive. In the silent, steel-lined corridors of power, information is currency. But some information is a debt, and the price for holding it is absolute. We are exploring the stories of those who paid that price, the people who knew too much, and were erased from the world. Our story today begins not with a bang, but with the quiet tap of a keyboard, with a document that should never have been written: the Descent Memo. In the autumn of 1983, Arthur Jennings was a mid-level analyst for a powerful multinational corporation, a cog in a machine of global influence. His job was to analyze logistical data for overseas operations. It was mundane, repetitive work, buried in spreadsheets and shipping manifests. But Arthur was meticulous. He saw patterns others missed. He noticed discrepancies, ghost shipments, phantom payrolls, and equipment routed to unregistered black sites in politically unstable regions. These weren't accounting errors. They were the fingerprints of a shadow operation, a private war being funded and supplied under the guise of corporate logistics. For months, he compiled his findings, cross-referencing redacted reports and encrypted communications he wasn't supposed to have access to. The picture that emerged was terrifying. His employer was not just complicit in fueling regional conflicts. It was actively directing them for profit, using a network of shell companies and deniable assets. Arthur believed the truth had to be exposed. He drafted a 72-page memo, a meticulously detailed account of the entire operation, complete with names, dates, and account numbers. He titled it simply, "Internal Review and Ethical Discrepancies." It was a dissent memo, a formal challenge to the corporate narrative. He made 3 copies, one for the board, one for a trusted journalist, and one he kept hidden. It was a fatal miscalculation. He underestimated the lengths the corporation would go to protect its secrets. On October 12, 1983, Arthur Jennings emailed the memo to the board's secure server. That evening, he left his office, briefcase in hand, and was never seen again. His car was found abandoned by a river, wiped clean. The journalist he was supposed to meet received a cryptic, last-minute cancellation. The original memo on the corporate server was scrubbed, its existence denied. Arthur Jennings, the man who saw the truth in the numbers, became a ghost in his own story, his life redacted, his warnings silenced. But what of the 3rd copy, the one he kept for himself? For decades, it was a legend, a whispered rumor among investigators and conspiracy theorists. The lost dissent memo that held the key to a man's disappearance and a corporation's dark heart. The search for that document would consume lives, end careers, and prove that the most dangerous weapon in the world is sometimes a single piece of paper. Narrator. The disappearance of a single individual like Arthur Jennings is a tragedy. But when it becomes a pattern, it points to something far more sinister. It suggests a mechanism, a system designed for the sole purpose of silencing dissent. This is the unseen hand, the clandestine infrastructure that enforces the ultimate non-disclosure agreement. These are not common criminals. They are professionals, operating in the gray spaces between corporate security, intelligence agencies, and private military contractors. Their methods are precise, varied, and terrifyingly effective. They don't always resort to overt violence. The goal is not to create a martyr, but to create a void, a question mark where a person used to be. The first step is digital assassination. The target's online presence is methodically dismantled. Emails are deleted, social media profiles vanish, and personal data is corrupted or wiped from servers. A carefully constructed false trail might be laid, a sudden trip abroad, a cryptic message about starting a new life. This sows confusion and delays any serious investigation, buying crucial time. While the digital ghost is being created, a physical surveillance team takes over. They are masters of their craft, able to track a target for weeks without being detected, learning their routines, their habits, their vulnerabilities. They use sophisticated technology, long-range listening devices, GPS trackers, and covert cameras disguised as everyday objects. The target is isolated, their support network subtly undermined. Friends might receive strange calls, family members might be subjected to veiled intimidation. The objective is to make the target paranoid, to make them doubt their own sanity, making them an unreliable witness should they ever get the chance to speak. When the time is right, the extraction occurs. It is rarely a violent public abduction. It is often quiet, seamless, a doctored invitation to a meeting that doesn't exist. A staged traffic stop on a lonely road, an opportune moment when the target is alone, with no witnesses. The location is sanitized, leaving behind no evidence, no struggle, no forensic trail. What happens next is the subject of grim speculation. Some are given new identities and exiled under threat. Others are permanently detained in unofficial facilities, their knowledge exploited or neutralized. And some are simply erased, their bodies disposed of in ways that guarantee they will never be found. This unseen hand is the ultimate tool of control for those who have too much to lose. It is the silent partner in every conspiracy, the guarantor of every cover-up. It ensures that those who stumble upon the truth, who dare to write their own dissent memo, do not just disappear from sight. They disappear from history itself. Narrator. Before the void, before the silence, there is always a final image, a frozen moment in time captured by chance that becomes an artifact of a life about to be extinguished. For Danny Casolaro, an investigative journalist in the early 1990s, that image is particularly haunting. The photograph shows him at a gas station leaning against his car, talking on a payphone. It's mundane, unremarkable. He looks tired, perhaps stressed, but he is alive. He is still part of the world. At the time this photo was taken, Casolaro was deep inside a sprawling investigation he called the Octopus. He believed he had uncovered a vast conspiracy linking stolen government software, a shadow intelligence network operating within the U.S. government, and a series of high-profile political scandals. He told his friends and family that he was close to breaking the story, that he was about to meet a key source who would provide the final piece of the puzzle. This photograph captures him in that final stretch, a man on the verge of a revelation or on the edge of an abyss. A few days after this picture was taken, Danny Casolaro was found dead in a hotel room in Martinsburg, West Virginia. His wrists were slashed. His meticulously organized research notes, the lifeblood of his investigation, were gone. The authorities ruled it a suicide. His family and colleagues never believed it. They pointed to his known fear of needles and the fact that he had repeatedly told them, "If anything happens to me, don't believe it's an accident." The last known photograph becomes a focal point for our grief and our suspicion. We scrutinize every detail. What was he saying on that phone? Was he arranging the meeting with his source? Did he notice the person taking the photograph? Does the grain of the image hide the face of someone watching him from a distance? This single static frame is imbued with all the tension and paranoia of his final days. It is the last verifiable point in his timeline before he was consumed by the very conspiracy he was trying to expose. For every person who knew too much and disappeared, there is a similar image. A candid snapshot at a family barbecue. A security camera still from a convenience store. A smiling face in a crowd. These images are memorials. They are the last time the world saw them whole, before the unseen hand reached out and pulled them into the shadows, leaving behind nothing but a photograph. A final silent testimony to a life that was stolen. Narrator. What is left when a person is erased? After the news cycle moves on, after the official investigation is closed with a shrug and a file stamped unsolved, what remains is a profound and deafening silence. This silence is an entity in itself. It is the space once filled by a voice, a laugh, a presence. For the families of the disappeared, this silence is a form of perpetual torture. There is no closure, no grave to visit, no final answer, only a gaping wound that never heals. They are left to navigate a labyrinth of official denial and public indifference. Their pleas for information are met with redacted documents and bureaucratic stonewalling. They become investigators themselves, piecing together fragments of a life, chasing down cold leads, clinging to the hope that one day the truth will surface. But the silence is designed to be impenetrable. It is an active, weaponized silence, maintained by the same forces that orchestrated the disappearance. It serves as a warning to others who might consider speaking out. It says, this could be you. This void could be your legacy. The silence also seeps into the historical record. The contributions of the disappeared are forgotten. The truths they died to protect are buried under layers of disinformation and time. Arthur Jennings's dissent memo becomes a footnote in a forgotten corporate archive. Danny Casolaro's Octopus becomes a cautionary tale for journalists who dig too deep. The narrative is controlled by the victors, by those who hold the power to erase not just people, but their ideas as well. We are left with the echoes. The cold case files gathering dust in a police basement. The abandoned apartments filled with personal belongings that wait for an owner who will never return. The aging photographs on a mantelpiece. These are the artifacts of the silence. They are a testament to the fact that someone was here, that they mattered, that they saw something they weren't supposed to see. Here at the Obsidian Archive, we refuse to let that silence win. By telling these stories, we keep their memory alive. We honor their courage. We look into the void and acknowledge the shape of the person who was taken from it. For in the fight against the powers that thrive in darkness, the act of remembering is the ultimate act of defiance. The silence remains, but as long as we keep asking the questions, it will never be absolute.